Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the webinar series of IPL. So, the webinar series was started as an initiative from our end to help a lot of the aspiring product managers and technical project managers, technical architects, everyone who wanted and aspired to get into product management and into product marketing. These are webinar series and talks by industry leaders and experts in this field, veterans who have been curated from across the globe, who are in the leadership roles, will speak to you so that you have a clear understanding of what your product management trajectory looks like and what do you mean by product leadership in this data-driven and tech world. So welcome once again, guys, to the webinar series of the Institute of Product Leadership. Let me quickly take you through a short introduction of what we are and how we have been serving the product space in the past 6 years. So yes, about us, we have been here since 2012. Like I told you, 6.5 to 7 years. We have about 1,800 plus alumni across different courses that we offer. Some of them being the 2-year MBA program in product management, which is an executive level, and the others being a 5-month course, which is certification in product management, and the others being the 3-day workshop in product management. We have engaged about 220 plus companies, and we are proud to have 4 campuses across India and abroad. The first one being the CMI University in Bangalore. The second is the MIT ADT University in Pune, Institute of Management Technology in Hyderabad, and Rutgers Center of Innovation in New Jersey, USA. Now, if in case you're not still sure, these are the corporate clients that we have happily served in terms of product management, having done specific workshops for them in the product space and the product leadership. And there are much more than that, because you've seen the 220 plus companies that we have worked with. And like I said, if you think you are not sure of what your product management career is like, you can of course ask your questions today, or you have a 30-minute coaching session with a senior faculty. And this can be one of those professors at our institution, and you get a free coaching session. Just scan the QR code that you're seeing right now, and you'll be able to book an appointment for each of these faculties, right? So what we're trying to create here is also an alignment of people who have already been in this role and have learned a lot of things on the go. We would like to align your knowledge into a formal training, or we'd like to align that your career also takes a formal path, right? And so please understand that every webinar that we have, for people who have already seen this would know that question and answer sessions are there with the speaker, and the best question always gets voted by the speaker. And today our speaker has recommended that the discipline of market leaders in this growing world where marketing is like all over the place in terms of digital and offline medium, what discipline should be followed by marketing leaders or market leaders in defining their product marketing strategies. Now, this is the book that the speaker recommends, and this will be given free of cost to one person who asks the best question. Now, how do you ask these questions? Right after the webinar is over, you can either tweet your questions on @ProdLeader handle, or you can go to our LinkedIn page and post your questions there. You can simply always also use the Q&A box that is there in the Zoom webinar, or last of all, email the questions to us so that we can pick up your questions, and then the speaker will answer them once the webinar is over live today, right? And having said that, let me take the opportunity to introduce to you and welcome our speaker, Mr. Shesh Gorur, Vice President of Bottom Line Technologies, right? So I'm sure a lot of you would have already seen the LinkedIn post and gone ahead and checked his profile. Mr. Shesh Gorur would be pleased to introduce himself in detail as to how he's been working with the product management space. But today, in specific, he's going to be speaking about product marketing and what is the criticality of this particular role in a data-rich market. right? From back in the times when we used to do cold calling to today when we have qualified leads and we have data to assess our campaigns. What is the role and the criticality of it in such a market is what he'll be talking about. I would like to welcome Shesh Gorur today. Welcome, Shesh. And if you could take over the screen right now, we would like for you to engage with our audience for the next 30 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much, Bipin. So, folks, as Bipin just introduced me, my name is Shesh Gorur, and I run commercial banking and anti-fraud, anti-money laundering, and compliance-related businesses for Bottomline Worldwide, or rather Bottomline Technologies, and I have worldwide responsibilities for these business units. So the discussion today is about product marketing management very specifically. In my current role as well as my previous roles, I've had management responsibilities over product management, product marketing, sales, engineering, and pretty much like think of it as a GM kind of a role. And so I have a very decent view of what product marketing management is. And I think as we proceed in this extremely data-rich environment, we'll see that this role is an extremely critical one to succeed in this marketplace. Now, most of what I'm talking about, just given my background as well as the relevance of the topic here, is probably targeted more towards a B2B space or an enterprise software space. But even though I use that particular lingo, it's actually very much applicable to the retail space as well. And frankly, it's relevant outside of the software industry also. So I think while the language I use and the words I use may seem to be very B2B specific, this is applicable to a broader audience. So let's, all right. So let's start with doing a level set on at a very high level on what is the role of a product management organization within a company, right? Typically, a product management organization includes three fundamental roles. One is the technical product managers or product owners or business analysts. And essentially, the title depends and varies quite a bit based on the software development methodology that's used and in that organization to a very large extent. And in addition to the technical product managers, you also have product managers who are more business focused rather than technical focused. And then you have the product marketing function, which is more related to the go-to-market strategy development as well as developing the collateral around what the sales team will use, as well as what the customers see, and also for training and doing a level set across the company for what those products bring to the table. So it's a very, very cross-functional role. Most people are on this call are probably very familiar with this kind of a chart where you have the product management organization speaking to different stakeholders, both internal and external. And I think I like this chart a lot because it actually portrays one of the key tension, if you will, for the role in a product management role, where you need to be balancing the requirements of folks across the organization as well as external entities like customers and analysts. So the key job of the product management person in this organization is essentially to balance all the requirements from all of the stakeholders and making sure that you're maximizing the ROI for the company and also in keeping with what the company needs from a strategic standpoint. So although all of the internal stakeholders listed over here, although they have the same end goal, their near-term tactical goals are different. For example, take quality assurance over there. QA's goal is to fix as many bugs as possible before the product ships out. whereas the sales basically is asking you to provide the customer what they want, and they want it right now. And you have marketing who are asking for more features and functionality that they can market and they can evangelize across the market space. Whereas you have the customer support folks who are asking you to prioritize issues that are causing them to receive calls from all over, and they want you to prioritize that over the new functionalities that probably marketing and the sales guys are asking you for. And then you have the legal, for example. They're looking at what is the exposure to the company because of using GPL software code, for example, or what are the liability concerns with what you're working on, and also what are the license agreement clauses for each of these customer deals, and how is it best articulated to make sure that the exposure to the company is kept at a minimum as much closer to zero as possible. And then, of course, you have the executive management who are asking you to do all of these things and do it faster and cheaper. So it is intrinsically, it is a role where you have to be have to balance the requirements across the organization and maximizing, like I said earlier, about maximizing the ROI and keeping the product strategy in lockstep with whatever the executive mandate happens to be in keeping with the longer-term corporate strategy. And in order to do that, people in this organization need to have an extremely firm grasp on what drives business, what the competitive landscape looks like, and pretty much what the industry space looks as a whole. And when I say industry space, I'm not talking about the software industry. I'm talking about your target markets industry. So you need to have the domain knowledge as well, in addition to what your software does and things like that. So all of these are things that your team needs to know. And of course, given this highly cross-functional role where you have you don't have any direct authority over any of these groups, but your authority basically comes because of your overall responsibility. And as a result, oftentimes product management is referred to as the CEO of the product because it is a highly cross-functional role. And one last thought on this slide is there are two very core strengths of what I believe product managers should have. That refers to both from a product marketing and product management standpoint, as well as from the product owner standpoint, and they are related to negotiation and communication. I think given the different stakeholders that you're talking to, having the ability to talk to different stakeholders and bring an agreement on what is actually going to get delivered at different points in time is quite a difficult task. And that is something that, so the ability to negotiate and to communicate are, I think, vital skills to have in this space. Now, when you look at this colored area, right, the colored area here represents what product marketing folks are primarily focused on. This does not mean that they don't talk to other people in the organization, or that other people in the product management organization don't interact with the people in the colored areas. It just means that what their primary responsibilities are with, who are they primarily tasked to talk to, and what do they do. So, for example, if you start with the customers, one of the core strengths of a product marketing person, as I said earlier, is the communication skills, right? So you need to be talking to the customers. You need to be talking to and talking about what the value proposition of your products are, and in their context. And I will get to that in a bit about the context. But the thing is, while there are other roles within the company who are also talking to the customers, and sometimes talking to the customers a lot more often than a product marketing person does, the product marketing person actually is talking to the customers at a very critical juncture in building the relationship with the prospects, and also in terms of maintaining ongoing relationships with customers. It's it's a very vital role for product marketing to be talking to customers, and sometimes it does get overlooked with all the things going on and the workload and things like that. But we cannot minimize that. because it's extremely important for product marketing to evangelize your solution, as well as to get feedback on what's happening out there in the industry, what the customers' pain points are, and understand exactly how the future versions of the solution or new solutions can address their needs better. And then you have the analysts, where you're discussing about both from a standpoint of them learning about your products and exactly the value that your products provide to customers, what is the language that you would like the analysts to use when they report on what you do. And oftentimes customers actually consult with analysts as well to figure out which product to get and how, and your reputation and things like that. So it's important to have that, maintain that relationship. Over and above that, you're also talking to the analysts to understand their viewpoints, because they are talking to your competition as well. So they will tell you things that are not confidential about their discussions with other vendors in the space, and they do this day in and day out. So it is important that you leverage their language, their knowledge as well. And then you have the corporate marketing piece, where you're talking about creation of positioning statements, the competitive battle cards, sales pitch decks, things like that. You're also helping in deal validation for fit, appropriateness of the solution to the customer, and also from a profitability standpoint. So all of these evaluations need to be done, and you'd be working very closely with corporate marketing, Marcom, and other roles. I tend to mix product marketing and solution marketing into the same bucket, because in most companies, unless they're massive and the product marketing group is very large, both of these roles are usually joined together. But in some cases they're not, in which case corporate marketing would have the solution marketing piece, because they're looking at it more from a broader scale beyond a certain product or solution space into a cross solution, across multiple product lines in an organization and things like that. All right, and so when we talk to what's happening in the marketplace today, right? The prevalent wisdom currently on how the purchase decisions are made is that the buying organization essentially starts collecting all of the information across different using different tools. Like I said earlier, they may be talking to the analysts, they may be talking to their peers, they may be talking to frankly, people who've come into their organization from their competitors who may have used a similar product over there, and also from the internet. The amount of data that's right now available is very, very large, as you all know. And so they're looking at all of the data, they're evaluating feature functionality, and then doing their own competitive analysis, trying to figure out which one is better, looking at pricing and things like that, and also gathering all of this information. But the common myth is that we are all rational individuals. Far from it, right? I think while logical thinking, rational and dispassionate decision making are what we think we do, we are primarily driven by our emotions. That is very key to understand, because as we are looking at selling to this marketplace, we tend to forget that, and we start evangelizing our products based on feature functionality and price, and trying to create charts that have an information, basically giving customers with an information overload on exactly what value your product is adding to them. The fact of the matter is, it's actually a very emotional thing, and so when you're looking at it, customers are looking for an experiential engagement with you. They're expecting the same level of experience that they get as a consumer. They're not looking looking to passively get this kind of charts as information. At the end of the day, remember, we are dealing with individuals. The people who are making or influencing the purchase decisions are using your solutions are using other solutions as consumers as well. And so it doesn't make sense for them to have a very different experience as a consumer and have a more painful experience, if you will, as an enterprise customer. They are expecting the same level of convenience, same level of same advancements in technology and things like that as they see on the retail space. For example, if you're looking at Amazon, right? People tend to buy more from Amazon not because it's inexpensive or things like that, but primarily because it's more convenient. Amazon seems to know exactly what I want, and so searching for goods is a lot easier. They know what kind of price I'm willing to pay. They also know what kind of items I'm looking to buy, and all of that information has to be easily available. Customers are constantly looking at that. And similarly, perception is a strong factor. When customers look at your solution, they're looking at your website and things like that. How easy is it to get that information? Emotions are processed 5 times faster than logical thought, according to psychiatrists, which basically means that if you are able to get them to emotionally get involved with your product faster, then that's the stickiness automatically improves, because by the time their logical thought kicks in and when they're doing a feature functionality comparison, there is already some amount of vested interest that's been created by you for your customer. So you need to answer the question of what's in it for me, what are the emotional centers, and what are the I mean, you're looking at the emotional centers. According to Neurology Times, there are 6 emotional centers over here. Hopefully, you are capitalizing on the happiness and the surprise, the positive emotional centers, rather than the ones that are negative. The negative emotional centers do have a space from a competitive standpoint, but they tend to be more tactical and short-lived. And they do have their place when certain market realities suddenly change and things like that. So at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you give confidence to the customers in what your company's stability is, and the bandwidth, and the ability to handle the customer needs through a feature functionality decision and all of that. But then when you're giving all of that information, there is a huge white space between the two topics of giving that confidence to the customers about your company and then talking about feature functionality. The big white space there is related to what are the customers' unique needs, what are their concerns, and what is the business problems that they're trying to solve. How often would you have seen a presentation by a sales team that essentially goes from, this is what we are capable, this is our company, and this is what we are capable of? Where was the whole discussion about what is your exact need, and this is probably how we'd help you solve? When things go unsaid, you're leaving it open for interpretation, and in an environment with, like I said, the copious amounts of data that's out there, not all of the information that they're getting, the data that they're getting, will be accurate or even complete. They paint partial picture, and you may unjustifiably lose out on an opportunity to serve another prospect. So it's critical that you engage with your customers emotionally, and product marketing plays a massive role. In fact, they own the job of making sure that they're creating that kind of a relationship with the customer. So this chart over here is very interesting. Customers are looking essentially for solutions that are adding personal value to them, either by addressing business pain points like achieving business goals and minimizing the risk of personal pain. For example, damage to your reputation, damage to your work-life balance, or advancement in the company. And from a business goal standpoint, you're also looking at minimizing the risk that you'd be posing to the company by making a specific choice of vendor. And this actually explains why at your customer site you usually have a coach over there. A coach is basically a person who works for the customer, but who has a vested interest in your success. Because the coach is essentially the person who's evangelizing your solution in-house, and because they believe in what you're doing and they believe that you have the right solution for them. It is extremely critical that you manage that relationship very well and identify who that coach is very early on in that discussion. And as you can see, I mean, this is a very simple slide to look at. Around 70% of your customers are willing to pay more and also willing to purchase if they see the personal value that I just spoke about. That's a massively important number. And equally important is the number where when they don't see personal value, the willingness to purchase drops so significantly, and the willingness to pay a higher price drops even further. So that should make the point pretty clear. And then there's to talk about the data correlation about personal value that that the solution is adding. When we talk about this 74%, this number essentially shows the importance of reaching out and providing value to a prospect or to an existing customer first. It's not about just providing value at a slow pace. It is about making sure that you are adding the value at the appropriate time, early on. And if you're the first person to show that you are adding value to them very early in the stage, then the likelihood that you will win that customer is 74%. This is through an extensive amount of research that's been done by Corporate Visions and Salesforce and things like that. And the other number that I got from Salesforce as well is that customers are 5 times more likely that a prospect will engage with you the minute they'll realize that you're adding value. So the combination of these two numbers is very critical for you to understand that you need to quickly and rapidly add value to your customers, and do it early and do it consistently, and make sure that you're that you truly understand the domain of the customers. That is vital. Understanding customer domain is probably not as not as concentrated on by product marketing in many organizations, and but that is key. I think as people are transitioning from, let's say, a technical role, or even from a business-oriented role, from like solution consulting and things like that, into product marketing, these folks really have a deep understanding of both the product and, to a certain extent, of the space as well. So for them to get into a product management or product marketing related role is going to be a lot more easier, and also a lot, and they'll have all the relevant information from the domain knowledge standpoint to get there. And so when we look at the buying process, obviously I've simplified this to make my point here, but when you look at the different phases, if you turn that into 6 different groups, where you start with the determination of the need, which right now is a self-driven research that's happening by the customer or prospect. They're looking at their pain points. They're looking at how to leverage the solutions that they have in-house to gain a competitive advantage over their customers, over their peers. And so at that phase, they're doing a massive amount of data gathering, but completely in-house. They're not talking to anybody. They're just still formulating their ideas. They're basically validating their thought process at this stage. And then you have the vendor outreach process, where they're beginning to actually talk to vendors and finding out exactly what solution you're providing to them. And then you're evaluating the alternatives based on what you heard back from vendors. You issued an RFP. You get a response. You have a lot of information based on the RFP questions that the vendor asked, or rather the prospect asked, which basically means that the prospect has already made assumptions on what solution they need. By the time the RFP is written, the vendor, or rather the prospect, already knows to a very high extent on what kind of a solution they're looking for. And then they start, and I'll discuss the problem with that shortly. And then they get into the evaluation of fit. That's both a technical evaluation that happens as well as process evaluation. Will they have to change their internal workflows? What is the likelihood of that happening, and all that kind of stuff. And once they identify a single vendor, you get into a contract negotiation process that is pretty much driven by a procurement organization within a prospect's company. And then once that's done, time to break out the champagne, and that's when the partnership begins. At that point, when you're talking about complex enterprise software, obviously it's not that you sell a piece of code on a DVD or a download and you're done. You're helping them deploy the software, you're helping them configure their systems, as well as you're helping them evangelize what kind of a workflow they need to have in their organizations. And that usually is handled between the sales engineers, the deployment team, and later handed off to the support organization. During this entire process, obviously the color codes are pretty much self-explanatory. The product management involvement starts sometime during the vendor outreach process, when the RFP process begins, or when the early negotiation with the vendor starts, and goes on until the procurement phase begins. After that phase, during the procurement stage, there's not much of an involvement in a very typical organization for product marketing. This poses a problem. As I mentioned earlier, I think I gave clues to what I was going to say on the earlier slides. But what you see is that where you need to go with this thing is the product marketing involvement, because it's an emotional response, because you want to make sure that you get in and drive the RFP authoring with the partner, explaining to them what the value proposition is. Oftentimes, when your prospects don't fully understand the market, right? I mean, it's not intuitive to understand that, but the person who's looking at purchasing a particular tool does not usually have in-depth understanding of what's happening out there in the market and how they could leverage it. They have a fairly narrow view of what's happening, and there's a lot of value that product marketing can add by getting in early on this game and start doing the knowledge sharing activities very, very early in the process, explaining how you'll be able to capitalize on the latest advancements in, for example, technology or process or what have you. And so you'd want the product marketing organization to be having this discussion during the point where the prospect is actually thinking about bringing in a solution to solve a particular problem. They may discover that the problem that they're articulating is probably not the whole picture. They may be articulating the problem the wrong way. If there are product managers currently on this call, you have seen multiple times that when a customer comes to you and says that I have problem X, Y, and Z, and you research further, you will discover that that's not usually the case. That wasn't the problem at all. I remember when I used to work in speech recognition, we had a radiologist who would constantly complain that the speech recognition for the radiology was not working for him at all, and it was misrecognizing a lot and all that, which was very surprising because if anybody on the phone really knows about speech recognition, the vocabulary for a radiologist is actually very narrow. And so we were very surprised that this person was having a very bad experience. And so we sent the product manager over to have a look at the problem and to identify what was going on. And interestingly enough, for speech recognition to work well, one of the recommendations that's always made is that your microphone should be held a certain distance close to your mouth, and and that should not vary. And what was happening over here was this person was using an overhead microphone and walking around the office and making this and dictating notes, which obviously did not work. So all we did was we just gifted this person a headset, and that was the end of it. So it's very, very critical to maintain a close relationship with the customer, understand exactly what the need is, and then the value, and then the articulation of the problem will completely change. So you need to be involved at this stage. And later on during the procurement phase, it's not enough to be involved until the procurement begins and the contract negotiation begins. You want to have this conversation with the prospect and other people at the prospect side, and also your internal folks on a regular basis, trying to understand if the value proposition came through properly. How is the pricing discussion going on? The minute you start in an enterprise setting, when you start fighting on price, it more often is leading to a problem that's outside of price. It's usually about the value proposition. It's usually about what value they believe that they're getting out of the system and things like that. It's rarely, price is rarely a criteria for why a vendor is picked or not picked. It does happen at times, but that's very rarely the case. So, and then you want to make sure that you're fine-tuning your pricing, you're fine-tuning your collateral, and then also you'll be fine-tuning your sales training, for example. You'll be fine-tuning your the training you provide to your support teams, all that kind of stuff. Now, the product marketing person is not providing the training on their own, but they're helping create some of the collateral. They're helping articulate some of these points. And then when the customer handoff happens, then things are fine, but then you're going to be maintaining a relationship with them after that as well. But I'll get to that in a second. All right. So a product management product marketing manager has to answer a very fundamental question that often gets lost in the complexity of talking about products and features and what does our solution do versus our competition, and how we are addressing the customer's need and things like that. And it gets very deep very fast. And but the thing to remember is, during this entire discussion, the one thing that's going on in the customer's head, even though they're not articulating it as such, is, so what? Why does what you're telling me matter? What is it that you're telling me? How does it solve my problem? Is it going to improve my process within my organization? Is it going to make my life easier? My career is on the line here. There is a you've probably heard the adage of nobody got fired for picking IBM. That's from the late 60s through 80s. That was used. That statement was used a lot, and frankly, it's still used sometimes here. But the point that's of that adage is that the customer is fearful of the choice that they make because they don't know whether they're making the right choice. Their career is on the line because their reputation is on the line. Their like I said earlier, their work-life balance, everything gets affected by the choice that they're making. So they're as stressed out as you are about getting the deal, probably a little more, because they have a personal interest vested in that. And then what does this thing provide a competitive advantage over my peers in this industry? What are the cost efficiencies that I gain by picking your product versus the other one? The last point that I just made about cost efficiency is something that gets often overlooked in these discussions with our prospects, because in a lot of cases they don't fully understand. They start looking at the price of of a tool or whatever widget that they're buying, and then but what they're not looking at is the total cost of ownership. A product that is cheap to buy but requires 10 people to maintain is costlier than a product that's probably 25% more expensive but requires one person to maintain. The payback is within a year, if that's the case, right? Obviously, it depends on salary levels and all that, but you get the point. And then, so the question to answer then is, what am I buying? Am I buying just a widget? If I'm just buying the software, then the value add you're providing me is basically the spreadsheet I was talking about, right? A feature-to-feature comparison and things like that. But that's not a useful metric, because invariably every vendor is going to come up with the same set of features over time. The true differentiators would be in forms of the expertise that you can provide. What are the things that you can provide from a competitive standpoint? How will you help me succeed? That's essentially the so what of this whole thing. And then what is the kind of customer support you provide? What are the SLAs that you provide? So essentially, by picking you, if my system goes down, how quickly will you be able to recover? What are the are you going to have my back? Are you there for me when things go bump in the night? What is your support philosophy? And then the thought leadership piece, right? When beyond the software, how will the workflow change? What are the things that we end up doing? What is what's happening out there in the industry? What are the market trends? How will you help? Again, how will you help me succeed? And then the last point here is about time to market. It's not just this; they're not just buying a software one time and it's not buy once and it's done. It's they're buying into a relationship with you as a vendor. That's the difference between a B2B versus a consumer in most parts, because once a consumer buys a particular product, they continue to use the same product, whereas for a long time, depending on the product, of course. But on the enterprise side, usually you're looking for enhancements. You're looking for things that help you get into a leadership position or maintain your leadership position. So how quickly will you be able to deliver features and functionality? How quickly will you be able to deliver on your expertise and guidance? And what is the time to market for the solutions that you provide? That is the reason why when you're talking to a vendor, or when a vendor is talking to a prospect, oftentimes the questions that come up are related to your roadmap. They're asking you, what are you bringing to the market next? It's not that they're good, what you're bringing to the market next is what they need today. It is that they want to know that you're investing heavily into this product line, and that and you're not basically buying a product that's pretty much on the back burner in your organization. That is the reason why they're asking you that question. So when I showed you the earlier slide about the linear fashion of how a deal happens, I sort of did not paint the whole picture. The whole picture is this one. It's essentially that once you begin your partnership, you still need to be determining the need. Product marketing over here has to continue to play that massively important role where you're talking to the customer constantly, figuring out exactly, is the problem you have today solving the problem that you bought it for? Is there some other problem that's creeping up? Is there a change in the market in the industry that either you have heard about or something that the customer has heard about that you need to be that you believe needs to be addressed? Is there a better way to address the need? Again, it comes back to, is the problem statement being articulated the right way? More often than not, the crux to solving the problem or getting to the right answer requires in making sure the problem statement is articulated correctly, not just in mentioning what the symptom of that problem happens to be. And so it's very critical that you understand that product marketing's role is not just in bringing a customer to the table for negotiation by a whole bunch of folks. It is that you're involved in the negotiation, you're involved post negotiation, you're involved in continuously engaging with the customer and making sure that they are a referenceable customer for future deals and things like that. And of course, from a cost standpoint, it sounds fairly obvious, but the cost of maintaining an existing customer is a lot cheaper than acquiring a new one. The amount of process and the amount of mechanisms required to acquire a new customer is a lot more than what it takes to maintain an existing customer. And the added benefit is that if you're treating the customer well, they become your reference. They're talking to your analysts. They're talking to other people in the industry. And when one person at that particular customer site goes and works in a competitive with one of their competition, they will take the positive experiences that they had with you and say that, it's not just buying this particular tool, but it's also to make sure that that the tool you bought is well supported. It's well both from a product standpoint as well as from an industry standpoint, and they basically have my back. I sleep well at night as a result of buying that particular software. That is an extremely strong statement to hear a customer say. So, all right. So, last couple of slides over here. Just want to talk about where product marketing's primary ownership lies versus I see that we have 10 minutes left, so I'll hurry up a little bit, and then. From a primary ownership standpoint, product marketing is looking at customer-related activities such as creation of the buyer persona, creation of positioning statements and messaging around it, make sure that it's aligned with the corporate marketing functions, making sure that the message that you're sharing is not contrary to what the market is hearing and things like that. And then you also are talking to current and net new customers as well, making sure that the collateral is well articulated. In addition to that, you're also creating a go-to-market plan as well as the market launch plan and the execution of the plan. The product marketing person would be owning that entire thing. One of the things that I've noticed especially in the enterprise software industry is when product launches happen, it's usually, sometimes it's not really a launch. It basically becomes something that like the product escapes out of the organization. You don't want that. You want to make sure that the product is launched with all the fanfare it deserves. All the press releases are made, all the collateral, all the everybody is enthusiastic and enthused by what you're providing to the customer base. And then you're looking at from a thought leadership angle. You need to be providing the collateral. You need to be providing all of the information to the customers, and obviously that comes with a heavy guidance from the engineering team, the product management team, and corporate marketing team. The ownership lies here, but there are significant stakeholders elsewhere as well. And then you have to create the competitive landscape and maintain it practically every quarter at least. You have to keep it updated at all times. And then you have to maintain the analyst relations for your product as well. So quite a lot of tasks that the person needs to be doing on a continuous basis. And it's a very active, very hands-on and strategic role within an organization. And product marketing is also a very key influencer in a few other departments. When you're talking with corporate marketing, which owns creation of advisory boards and running them, the product user groups and things like that can be run by product marketing team. But overall, when you're talking about a corporate advisory board, essentially a board that involves your top customers who are helping you articulate your path forward as a company, and also to basically be a check and balance to make sure that what you're building and what you're thinking of is something that will be found valuable by the customer base. And then creation, that would be product marketing, but the product marketing team would be helping corporate marketing with that. And then you have the PR plan that needs to be created, the corporate events, and lead generation activities, the brand management related activities as well. And from a business standpoint, oftentimes you will be partnering. You may choose to partner with another company that provides a complementary solution to the solution that you provide, because you've discovered that the market requires, in reality, your product as well as a third-party product, and together the combined strength is much greater than the individual parts. The sum is greater than the individual parts argument there. And also from a channel sales standpoint. So, for example, if you're selling into certain geographies and you don't have a sales team there, you need to make sure that you're working with the channel sales team for that particular region, and making sure that those channel sales team really understands what they're selling. Because more often than not, these channel sales teams will not be dedicated to only your company. They're probably selling your competition as well. So you need to make sure that they are highly enthusiastic about it. And obviously, given the bandwidth and the breadth of the information that the product marketing team has from a domain standpoint and from a user and customer standpoint, you're essentially looking at helping with guidance on the product roadmap, the end user persona, and the user experience. The end user persona is obviously completely owned by product management, but then the feedback that you're getting will be a factor into advising product management on how that goes. And also from a pricing standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, that would be important. And then for maintaining customer relationships, identifying who your beta customers are going to be, and you'd be providing feedback to product management when they identify a few customers to run pilot programs or more in-depth partnership programs and things like that. So quite a bit there. I rushed through the last couple of slides, but I'd be happy to take any questions and things like that. Bipin, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Shesh, for the amazing session. I will just share my slides now, guys. We'll just take a minute here. And we are back on our webinar series, guys. And thank you so much, Shesh, for that amazing session. And on product marketing, I particularly like that slide where you said about people will be interested in your product only if it adds value to them, if they find context in it. And if not, they're not going to be interested, whatever so much you're going to offer them. So kind of a really good insight. I'm sure the audience has a number of questions. We have actually about 12 to 15 questions that has come in across the different participants. What we do right now is that we'll take one question at a time, and you'll be able to answer that. And like I said, we'll be then sharing the list of questions with you offline so that you can pick a winner. And are we good to go with the questions, if that's fine?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So the first question is from Arpita Sen, and Arpita asks, with the advancement of technology, user interfaces do change, with which users are not compatible. Earlier, there might be a new feature which is not there. So let's say in terms of advancement, because let's say an example of Facebook or LinkedIn, some sort of new interface has brought in some new feature which is not there. How does a product manager deal with this change in customer requirements?
Okay, that's a good question, Arpita, because that's one of the things that keeps propping up all the time, right? There is never a time when, remember at the beginning of the slides, I was showing a cross-functional what do you say, role that you're in, and balancing all the needs and things like that. It's almost impossible, and I would say it is impossible for you to satisfy all of the customer needs and all of the internal stakeholders' needs and things like that. In fact, I would say that if you're satisfying 100% of a need for any of those stakeholders, then you're probably ignoring somebody completely, and so which is a horrible thing to do. And so, but coming to your specific question about some user interface change and things like that, there are going to be situations like that. What you're hoping for is that so I'll answer from both a retail and an enterprise standpoint. From an enterprise standpoint, you're hopefully evangelizing what you're trying to build and all that with your customer base. If you have a very, very large customer base from an enterprise standpoint, you're talking to a subset of the top customers who are either the most vociferous set of customers or the most revenue generating customers, and making sure that they understand what you're building. Oftentimes when customers are coming back to you and saying that the user interface is making me do a process change and I don't like it and things like that, it's usually because they're not understanding the value that you're providing. If the change that you're talking about has something that's quite significant and something that would help them address a particular need, then that's fine. And if it's incompatible with, say, the browser, the change that you're bringing is incompatible with the browser, if there is enough value in there, if there are no security concerns, their IT team should be able to upgrade to the latest version, given enough time to account for funding for it and things like that. And that requires that roadmap discussion, that requires a more hands-on approach to having that discussion. What you do not want to do is hold back your technological advancements because a subset of your customers says that that's not going to work for them. And what you also don't want to do is have multiple versions of your product just because somebody does not want to go to the next version, right? They may hold back and stay with the old version of the product for a while, but until they actually realize that the value that you're providing with the new version is really good. It's pretty key to have that conversation with the vendors. On the retail side, you do have to make the changes that you need. I'm assuming that when you're making these UI changes, you've already done all the due diligence required to identify what the value is of the change that you're making. If you're making a change that only serves your own internal purpose, then you'll get zero sympathy from any of the customers, right? It has to be something that addresses their need. I hope that answers your question. If you have a very specific thing, I can always talk to you about that separately. Bipin, are you there?
Right. So thank you so much, Shesh. And if there's a supplementary question that is there, Arpita, it would be great if we can send it across to us, and then we would have it being sent to Shesh and he'll answer it offline. The next question is from Arun. Arun asks, how do we connect with a customer emotionally when we are doing product sales? Can you give an example of such an involvement?
Sure. So when we're talking about emotional involvement with the customer, I'm not talking about handing them a flower. I know you don't mean that either. But so what you're talking about when emotional involvement is, you're basically talking to them about the value that about what your product is providing, right? It is so think about it like this. As you were saying, as you were reading that, I was just thinking about this particular instance where if you look at an advertisement for Fitbit, for example, I don't know if it's the same advertisement that shows up in India as well, but if you look at an advertisement for Fitbit, they don't show you the device on that thing. They're talking to you about how fit you're going to be. They're showing you running on a beach at sunset, and it's all beautiful. The lighting is perfect, and there's a friendly dog running next to you, and that kind of a thing. Now that is the emotional connection there. What you don't see is, I forget the vendor, but all they did was basically show a fitness watch, and then they listed all the functionality about the uptime, how many hours it's going to stay on, and things like that. That does not make an emotional connection to me at all. It doesn't show me where I was what my life is going to be with that tool. It just tells me, the battery is going to last for 3 days before it requires recharging. Big deal.
So Have we ended this question? Shesh, I just lost you there.
Oh, no, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So, have you
Okay.
completed the answer? I just thought it was a quick, abrupt break, so I was not sure if we finished the question.
No, I did.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I do have a couple of more minutes if you want me to answer
Sure.
some
I'll
more.
just have a couple more questions. Are you able to, would it be okay if we take about 5-6 questions more?
That's fine.
All right. So the next one is from Sinto John. And the question he asks is, how do I measure the personal value of product that is being added to the customer? When personal values are different, how do you manage to make a balance and build an acceptable product for the market? Something in line with the question that you just answered, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a subjective question, Sinto. So I don't know whether I can give a generic answer to that thing. But essentially, when you're trying to measure the value that you're providing to the customer, it is specific almost by customer. So, for example, if you're talking to a customer that is at, let us say, a $5 billion revenue size, the conversation there, their pain points is going to be very different than a customer who's at a $500 million per year revenue company. So it's actually that's a difficult question to generalize. But what you do need to figure out is the value that you're providing purely from the standpoint of does this solve the customer's problem? That's a very at the very basic level. That's the question that you're answering. And since the answer to that question is different by customer, I can't give a specific answer there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The next question comes in from Siddesh. And Siddesh asks, as technology progresses, the UI UX for the long running product has to be changed. As a customer is accustomed to old UI, drastic change to UI renders the user clueless as well as confused. How can a product manager or marketing manager handle such situations? I think it's similar to the question Arpita had asked.
Yeah, actually, I think it's actually a corollary to that. It's so when you're having this conversation with customers in, excuse me, I need to change my headset. Give me 1 second. Hi, I'm still on call?
Yes. I can hear you.
All right. Okay. So my headset just ran out, and so I think when you're making drastic changes to the interface, especially on the enterprise side of the business, hopefully you're not making a drastic change all at once, because that the biggest pain point for the customer when you make a drastic UI change is when the amount of training that needs to be provided to their internal folks is quite high, and that requires a significant amount of investment on the customer side. This is even if you're not making any change to the process itself. Usually when you're making a UI change, you're doing it not just to beautify the product, but to make it more efficient, to make it better, more usable, and provide more functionality, and essentially make their life easier. So what you'd be doing is, during the product development process, you would be involving your customers with providing them wireframes, talking to them about exactly what's coming, and it would be a highly orchestrated product launch. You do not want to surprise the customer by shipping a product out and saying, okay, this is the new version, everything is changed. That would be absolutely disastrous. So you need to have you need to have a plan. If the market that you're in is okay with doing betas and things like that, some of the markets that I've worked with are very eager to do beta programs. Some of the markets that I've worked in are not. They're very averse to it. So in such cases, what I've done is we identify a subset of customers to whom which are highly representative of the market. Go to them with wireframes, have in-depth discussions, maybe once a quarter, depends on the kind of product that you're talking about, but go and talk to those people on a regular basis. And then you can have webinars, you can do your user group meetings and things like that, where you're also sharing this, the advances that you're making in the product. That actually works very, very well when you're talking about a customer base which is very large. So if it's customers do listen to what you're saying. The other thing is also to provide videos and short videos, not an hour-long video, but let's say 30-second videos of how can I accomplish X and Y. That is those small video snippets will be helpful for the customer in their training of their end users. If you're in a very large market, or rather, if you're in a market with large customers, but the number of customers is actually low, then you can offer training sessions and things like that you can provide. If you're in an extremely large market, you can still do that, but then you'd not be doing it on a one-on-one basis. We'd be doing it on in a seminar kind of forum. That's worked out pretty well as well.
Right.
Does it answer your question?
We will have, I think we will know if the supplementary questions are coming in. I'll just send it across to you as well. But I think that fairly kind of answers the broad understanding of the question. We'll take about 3 to 4 more questions, maybe in interest of time. The next one is from Suraj Bhavishkar. And the question he asks is, what should I do if a customer is demanding and ready to pay for some feature, but that feature is not aligning to my product roadmap or is diverting the product focus?
Right. That's a problem all of us know too well, right? So I think it again goes back to maintaining the customer relationship. Assuming that you're doing all the right things from a relationship standpoint, explaining to them what how to solve their problem through a workaround and things like that. If they still insist on willing to that they're willing to pay more and things like that, you can do a custom feature that gets added to the product as a product feature acceleration initiative or whatever you want to call it in-house. And as long as it does not run counter. So yeah, I think your question said that it's not aligning with the roadmap or deviating, but you didn't mention it's going against the roadmap. So if it is going against the roadmap, you don't want to do that under any circumstances, right? I mean, it becomes a custom project, and the last thing you want to do as a product organization is to have multiple versions and multiple code bases that you need to maintain. And the cost of customization of a product is way too high, almost always. And so you don't want to do that. But what you can do is you can start an acceleration initiative where you use the money or you ask the customer to pay a significantly higher amount of money to bring that feature in, which basically requires you to add more staffing and things like that, and they'll understand that. If they don't, and if they're not willing to do that, then it's not an important feature for them anyway. But I would urge that more often than not, what I've seen is when you have this conversation in depth and you also talk about exactly what the feature need is, you'll end up finding a workaround that works almost equally well, and it definitely at the very minimum will be a decently good stopgap measure while you're actually adding it into the product or at a later stage or whatever. It usually results because of a lack of clear understanding of the customer need.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And then last 2 questions we'll be taking today. So Sirisha's question is, how can product marketing team become leaders and decision makers than just being supporters to sales team?
Let me think about that, because I see product marketing as leaders already. And so in order to become leaders, so the thing is, so let me address this in a roundabout way, I guess. The sales team should not be leading any of the product marketing or any of the strategic objectives. Sales, by definition, unless you're talking about the sales leadership, from a salesperson standpoint, they're by definition in a tactical role. So they cannot be a decision maker. They shouldn't be. The sales leadership, of course, is in a strategic role. So they need to be part of the decision-making process. But then the sales team does not fully understand the product, or does not fully, at least definitely not to the level that the product marketing or product management organization does or should. So I would expect the product marketing team, because of their breadth of knowledge of the industry, and also the grasp that they have on the customers, I expect them to know to be leading the show already. So if you're from a decision-making standpoint, that's an organizational thing. I think the product marketing people will be making the decision, but at the end of the day, on the GTM strategy and things like that. But that has to be consistent with what the product manager is thinking, what the corporate marketing guys are thinking, and it's a collaboration thing. It's not one person who's going to be making the decision on their own. Again, going back to the first diagram that I showed, being such a highly cross-functional role, very few things are actually done in isolation. Now, I'm not saying that every decision has to be a consensus thing. That will never work. But what I am saying is that you are taking feedback and inputs from across all of the different functions, and then making a call in collaboration with two other people: product management and solution or corporate marketing. But I definitely would not want sales to be making decisions.
Okay.
And definitely not on price, by the way.
Right. Makes sense. Right. Thank you so much for that. And the last question we'll be taking today is by Jamir Bhasha. And he asks the question: how do I sell a non-consuming product or fresh products in the present generation, even if we have a good quality product with a high cost? If it's a non-consuming product or a new product in the market, how do I sell it, even if it is a good quality product and provided the cost is also high?
So what is the, what does the non-consuming product, what does that mean?
So I'm thinking, because similar question has come in at the top as well. It's something that the users are not very fond of, meaning they're not very looking forward, or that probably does not seem like a valuable product to them, something of those sort, but it's a very high quality product, and then it's there in the market and you have created something, but somehow users are not able to see the value. I'm thinking that's
right. Okay. So I don't mean to sound flippant when I say this, but why did you create a product that that the market does not see value in? So I would imagine that when the product design or the problem statement was being articulated about solving for a particular need in the market, then you would have done the research to figure out what addresses that problem. Of course, if you're trying to create a need, that's a different thing. On the consumer side, for example, again, the classic example is given of the Sony Walkman, right? When Akio Morita came out with the design of the Sony Walkman, he was basically saying that, he visited Los Angeles and he saw people walking around the streets with boom boxes on their shoulders. And he said, a personal music device would be a great idea. And that changed the market. Now, again, he foresaw a need and addressed the problem. Now, if you've created a solution for that the market has not yet realized the need for, that requires a lot of evangelizing, that requires a lot of helping the customer understand how that solves the problem. So when the Walkman came out, what he was essentially saying was you don't need to carry that huge device with multiple batteries and things like that, and walk down the street and annoy the rest of the people because of your loud music. So that was the value proposition there. But the thing is, if you have a solution that you're going to be bringing to market, you should be doing a lot of research before you're launching it or before you're building it to see if there's a need for that. And secondly, once you've done that, once you've built it, you'll need to talk to the customers about what value it adds to the customer. If a customer base is not willing to take a product, irrespective of the quality of the product, I mean, I'm assuming that we are talking about high quality products only, but that is a given. I mean, you can't tout the value that a product has high quality, because that's an assumption. That's a basic. You don't get brownie points for saying that you're building a product that's good. That's assumed. What you are building, what you will get credit for is if you're building a product that actually solves the need, or you can create a need too. But then again, in order to create the need, you should have already done the research early on to figure out whether there's a market for it. And if so, what are the customers willing to pay?
Right. That makes absolute sense. So I think that would cover almost all the questions that we wanted to discuss. So thank you so much, Shesh, for the wonderful presentation and the insights that you've given on the product marketing forum, and also the questions that you've answered in terms of context of each of the products. Right. Okay, for folks, so what's going to happen next is we just introduce to you the next events in line. So the next webinar will be on the 19th of February at 9 p.m. IST. And this will be by Ganesh Iyer, VP and Global Head of Marketing of the IPC Systems. And he'll be talking on winning strategies for B2B product marketing. Right? So he's specifically looking into the B2B market. So tune in, guys, and the link is on the webinar page of our event section. And you guys are already on these pages. The mailers will come in soon for you to register. Please make sure you don't miss the session. Following which, people in Pune, watch out for 7th of February from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the JW Marriott Hotel. We have the product and data science carriers. And this is for working professionals, the mid-career session that will be taken. So please make sure you register for this as well. And this is specifically for working professionals, mostly on mid-career transition and how they can do it in the new age skills of product and data science. The other event that we have is the early career event that is for freshers and people with 0 to 2 years of experience. And this is on technology management and data science careers. And this is also in Pune on the same day, but from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the JW Marriott Hotel as well. So make sure, guys, that you're logged on to these sessions if you think this is meant for you guys. And or let your friends know about this and share the link to them so they can register for the event. What we also have on 9th of February is in Bangalore at the Hyatt Centric Hotel. And this is again on mid-career transitions for people looking to move into the product and data science roles or into leadership roles. So please register now. The link will be shared with you shortly on the events page. And please make sure you register well in time so that your passes are given to you. Right, and so the best question, Mr. Shesh would now take the time offline to curate the questions once again, look through the questions he's not answered, a couple of them, the ones that he will find time to answer, and then pick the lucky winner. So that will be fair on both sides. And we will let you know shortly, and the winner gets the book. That's a discipline for marketers. And like I said, guys, we are the Institute of Product Leadership. We are a global business school for product and technology innovators. And we are one of its kind in India and in Asia. Reach out to us on our website at www.productleadership.com or follow us on the Twitter handle at ProdLeader. Write into us if you think there's anything concerning the careers or anything in terms of product management as a skill or anything in terms of product marketing and the different facets of it. If you feel any need, write to us at engage@ipl.edu.in. I'll see you guys shortly next week on the 19th of February for the next webinar. Until then, stay safe and wish you a great, happy learning in product management. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Mr. Shesh.
Thank you. Bye.